Oh, thank you, everybody. We're going to begin the open curriculum committee meeting. I'm going to pass it off to Karen Chase, the assistant superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. We're excited that you're here to listen to information about our design and technology program that is in the district grades K through 12. I am Karen Chase, the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. This is Danielle Romero, our supervisor of design and technology. To my left is Katie Hadley. She's our design and technology teacher at Milton Avenue School. This is Jess Lightis. She's our middle school robotics and coding teacher. And Julie Ryan, who teaches robotics at Chatham High School. So thank you all for being here, and especially thank you to all of you for coming out this evening. This time last year, the district posed a second question to voters to enhance and augment our technology program in grades K through 12. And as a result of that, passing of the voters approving that question, we were able to add staff, materials, and expand school facilities and update them for our program. The reason we chose to do this was because the job market for STEM looks very promising. In fact, a statistic shows that by 2018, STEM occupations are expected to increase twice as much as non-STEM related employment opportunities. And one of the things, and Danielle will speak to this more throughout the presentation, that we include in our design and technology program is an opportunity for students to engage in authentic and real-world problem solving following the design process, which Danielle has a slide on as well. So the changes that took place for this school year, we added a design and technology at each of the K through 5 elementary schools. We also added 3 design and technology teachers to Chatham Middle School, and we revamped those cycle classes. We also added 2 more design and technology teachers to Chatham High School. We also implemented and are using more Chromebooks at Chatham Middle School and Chatham High School. They're located in our media centers as well as in various other locations in the school. And the computer lab spaces at CMS and CHS were upgraded to better accommodate STEM and 21st century learning. So I'll pass this over to Ms. Romero, and she will talk in more depth about the program. There you go.
I just want to thank all of you for coming out today. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you what we've been working on in our design and technology program K-12. I do want to thank all you guys for being here. They're going to talk about all the fun stuff. So they brought a lot of our projects that the kids are working on, and they are looking forward to sharing that with you. So we've been working really hard with all of the teachers and all of the administrators across the district in order to get this program kind of up and running. So at the high school, we did have, a technology education program. We were able to expand that this year, like Karen just said, and we were also able to kind of bring that down and really, K-8, really develop a great program. So some of you know that this presentation was supposed to happen in January, and unfortunately we got snowed out. So right before that, I had gone to a professional development conference, and one of the keynote speakers was actually a resident of Chester, and he worked on creating Google Docs, and which now Google Drive, and he shared this Google video that I thought really did a great job of talking really about what STEM education and design-based pedagogy are. A lot of people, when they hear, a lot of us, teach technology education and, oh, you're a computer teacher. A lot of people don't really understand what is technology education, what is STEM education, and I thought this video would do a really good job of kind of just introducing you to what we're going to be talking about in this presentation.
Imagine the awesomest thing you can, like an automatic grilled cheese maker, or a time machine, or a time machine with an automatic grilled cheese maker. Now imagine who's going to invent it. Him? Glasses here? Whoever they are? Or maybe her? But how do kids like these become the types of people that do things like this? Maybe we should ask this guy.
Knowledge is heavy. Sometimes it's a limit to have new ideas. That's the problem with the old schooling, because they were teaching answers. I believe questions are probably more important today than the answers.
Erno's cube is a question waiting to be answered. And when the right person finds the right question, something amazing happens. They start seeing the world as it truly is. Not a place to be memorized, but a place to be figured out, flipped, turned, twisted, and ultimately made better forever. Today, she may be an octopus, but help kids like her fall in love with problem solving, and they will embark on journeys to become scientists, artists, engineers, designers, inventors, or something no one's ever been before, but you can bet we're gonna need. That's why moments like this, go, and this, and this, and especially this, are so important. Because there are companies to found, planets to walk on, time machines to invent, a future to be made amazing. We may not know what it's going to look like, but we know who's going to do it.
So I thought that video did a really good job of kind of prefacing this presentation. So one of the things that really kind of resonated with me when I was watching this was what he talked about with how schools tend to really focus on the answers, and how the whole purpose of STEM education and design-based pedagogy is to get students to think about what is the problem and how can I solve that problem, and how can I apply things that I've learned in other classes in order to come up with a way to solve that problem. And another thing that I think students kind of tend to struggle with, because we don't really, that's not the way we teach, is that sometimes there's multiple correct answers to things. You know, we're so used to what's that one right answer, and how do I do all the work to get to that one right answer? And, you know, our students have been recognizing is that there's a certain problem, and like Karen said, we really try to ground things in real world problems and get students to see the actual context and the authentic learning that they're going through, and realizing that if I have a certain problem, I can solve it one way, and you can solve it another way, and you might solve it another way, and they're all correct. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the engineering design process. The engineering design process is shown up here, and this is our elementary model that we use. It's the 5-step engineering design process, and really getting our students to understand the entire process needed in order to come up with a solution to the problem. So one great thing about, you know, our STEM classes and our design and tech classes here is that we really focus on authentic problem solving. So giving them a real-world context in which they're going to try to solve a problem. Okay, and the teachers are really going to share a little bit more about some of the problems that they pose to our students, you know, K-12. And also project-based learning. So like we said, it's a lot more hands-on. We got a lot more modeling materials for the kids to kind of engage in hands-on learning. You kind of saw that in the video. Collaboration and innovation are also really, really important. We're preparing our students for, I mean, most jobs that they're going to go into, you don't work on your own. You need to be able to work with one another and be able to kind of talk about things and explain what your thought process is. So in all of our classes, our students are, you know, either working in pairs, working in small groups. They might be working independently, but they'll get together to share what they were able to do and what their thought process was. Innovating and critical thinking, so getting our students to really use high-level thinking and really start to apply things that they've learned in different classes in order to solve these problems. And perseverance and grit is kind of what I was talking about before, how there's not one right answer. The kids are not just trying to find that one right answer. They're going to come up with what they think is the correct answer, and they're going to be able to explain themselves. And if you look at this engineering design process, it's asking the kids to, you know, what is that problem? So the first step is ask. What's that problem I'm trying to solve? And then imagine, let me brainstorm and come up with a couple different ways I can do that. Like, how might I be able to solve this one problem? They come up with a plan. You know, at the elementary level, they might just be drawing sketches. And then, you know, they start moving up in Jess's class, they're working on CAD software. And they're, you know, manipulating the computer program in order to come up with that idea, that solution. And then they're modeling it. For some of our classes, it's 3D printing them. In some classes, it's cutting and gluing and putting things together. But the real important thing here is the improve step. A lot of the times, our students will create a project, and they'll present it to their class, and that's it. In our classes, we ask the kids to go through this entire process, show it, test it, and then really go back and say, was that the best it could have been? I saw this other person did this, and if I would have combined that with what I did here, maybe it would have made it even better. So that's that last improve step. Evaluate their actual, you know, project, their solution, and try to go ahead and improve it. And getting students to realize there's not one right answer, and as long as I can explain it and maybe make it better, that's just as important. So I thought this was a really good graphic that kind of showed really what STEM education is, right? So most of us are used to what we see down at the bottom, disciplinary teaching. And we'll learn certain subjects in certain classes from certain teachers, and we'll get up and we'll go to the next class, and we'll learn another subject from another teacher. We don't really see how those classes or those disciplines interrelate and how they are interdependent on one another, or how I can apply them. in other situations, okay? And then you have multidisciplinary. So as we kind of move up this inclined plane, you know, the goal in our STEM program here, our design and technology program, is transdisciplinary teaching and learning, okay? It's getting students to really be able to apply content and apply knowledge and skills and kind of have those lines blurred. They're not saying, oh, I'm doing math right now. They're doing math, but they're doing math as part of their project or part of what they're working on. In multidisciplinary teaching, it's also known as thematic teaching, and there might be a certain common theme. I'll just use structures, for example. So maybe in structures is going to be a theme that all the teachers are kind of focusing on. And in history, they might be learning about the history of certain structures and in the United States and kind of their impact on society. And then in English, they're writing a paper on it. And then in science, they're learning about the different materials that these structures can be made out of. And in math, they're doing a cost analysis. So that's thematic teaching. There's a common theme, but they're still learning and doing things separately. Interdisciplinary, again, starts to move up that inclined plane. And the students now are possibly working on a project, but it spans multiple classes. So for example, prior to coming here, I was teaching architecture, and we got a PSENG grant and to design an outdoor environmental education center in our library media center courtyard. And so in my class, I took the kids out, we were measuring, and they were actually coming up with the plans to construct this outdoor environmental education center. And then, however, we also had solar panels that were donated. So we wanted to figure out how can we use those solar panels. And then we had the kids in math class go out and figure out what is the proper angle that sun's going to come in, and how should we design the pitch of the roof. Okay, so again, using separate classes, but really integrating it all in one project. Now, transdisciplinary is bringing everything together. It's what they're working on in our classes here. The lines are blurred. They don't understand that they're working on math now and that this is science. They're all together and they view them as one big subject area. And again, that's the purpose, and that's really what we're aiming at doing here in Chatham. So now that's kind of a basic, introduction into what STEM education is, and that it's an approach to teaching and an approach to teaching and learning. So a little bit about our program here. Like Karen said, this year we were able to add a lot more to our program and really expand and be a K-12 program. So at the elementary schools, we have one design and technology teacher at all the elementary schools. Every single student, grades K through 5, participate in the design and technology class. And the K through 3 schools, it's once per week. They'll go into the design and tech classroom and they'll work in those classes. And then in Lafayette, it's once per cycle, which might be one every 6 or 7 days. And then, so each grade has a specific theme that the students focus on in working through the engineering design process and working through these STEM activities. So in kindergarten, the main focus is a home for all seasons and habitats. And then in first grade, the main focus is agriculture and biotechnology. And in second grade, it's our environment, our health. You get the picture. So each one has a different theme that the students are focusing on. When you get to the middle school, we have 2 cycles per grade. So students can elect to take these classes if they're interested in them. Integrative STEM, or iSTEM, which is one of our 6th grade classes, is actually a required course that all 6th graders will take. And that really gives the students the basic understanding of this whole problem-based and critical thinking, inquiry type of learning necessary for them to be able to kind of be successful in all of our middle school classes as well as in our high school classes. Robotics is our other 6th grade class. Jess will talk a little bit more about that class. That students can elect to take that one. We have CAD, or computer-aided design, in 7th grade, Grand Design Challenge in 7th grade, and then we have app design and coding as our 2 8th grade cycle classes that are available at the middle school. This is our current high school program. So this year we were able to add 2 new classes, which are the 2 that are starred right here. Short films and design studio are actually 2 senior level classes. They're really like a capstone class. So if you take a look, they are color coded. So up on the top are the blue classes, and those are kind of our video production type of sequence. So if students are really interested in that, they can start with website design and end all the way at short films their senior year. That's where the Pulse is created, if any of you watch the Pulse. Connor Henderson does a great job with that program. Short films We started off with about a couple of kids in that class this year, about 12 kids. They've done a phenomenal job, and actually we sent 2 of our kids to finalists at the Kent Place Film Festival, and one of them just won. We just found out that she won. She did a great job. And so we're entering those kids in a couple more film festivals this year. Our purple courses are our engineering and architecture strand. So if students are interested in engineering or architecture, they can follow along with that course sequence. And then down at the bottom, the yellow ones are our computer science courses. So, and we're making a couple of changes to that, and at the end of the presentation, I'll show you some of the new courses that we were able to add to our program of studies. A couple of new things that we were also able to add, with being such a hands-on program, we need to provide our students with more modeling materials, right? So I was talking about how we have 2 brand new 3D printers at the middle school. We do also have one up in our high school program. We also added a vinyl cutter and a laser engraver to the middle school. So this allows our students to not only come up with the design of those solutions, but actually model them and go through that last part of the engineering design process and test them and evaluate them. Another thing that we were also able to do is educational technology. So I had mentioned the difference between technology education, which is what we call design and technology here, and our educational technology, which is using computers and the internet and other technological tools to assist in learning. So educational technology tools, we were able to add EduTyping as our online typing platform for students in grades K through 5 in order to get them used to manipulating the computer, utilizing, learning how to type. Google Classroom is something that we've actually started to integrate as well. All students starting in 2nd grade up to 12th grade have Google accounts, and the teachers have started to use this online course management system in order to provide a lot more like digital learning for their students. And as Karen had mentioned earlier, we were able to add a lot more Chromebook carts. So our students are really starting to use these across the curriculum, not just in our design and technology classes, but across all of their different classes are able to use these Chromebooks. This year we were also able to expand a couple of existing initiatives. So we did have a Technology Student Association up at the high school. We were able to expand that so that students are able to participate in more design competitions. And then the Hour of Code was something that we actually were doing as well. And this year we had all students K through 12 participate in the Hour of Code. At the elementary school level, our students were using the Chromebooks in the library, and our librarians helped to facilitate the Hour of Code with our elementary school students. And then in the middle school, we had it going on in the science classes, and up at the high school, we were doing it in the math classes. So this year, we were able to get full participation in the Hour of Code district-wide in December. And you kind of see him sitting up here, but this is our newest edition. I believe if I go back, we also got a large format printer and plotter that was courtesy of the Chatham Education Foundation grant that we got this year up at the high school. And Winston, who is sitting up here, and Jess will introduce you to him in a little bit. Hello,
my name is Winston.
There he is. So Winston was also courtesy of a Chatham Education Foundation grant. And Jess has started to integrate that into her robotics and specifically her coding classes at the middle school. We did a big naming competition, and the kids came up with about 15 or 20 names that they wanted him to be called. And then they voted, and they chose Winston, and Darwin came in 2nd place. So he's Winston Darwin now. So Jess will introduce you to him in a little bit. I just want to kind of talk a little bit about the standards that we focus on in our design and technology classes. So we basically focus on Standard 8 of the New Jersey Core Curriculum Content Standards, which is technological literacy. And then that's broken down into 2 substandards. Standard 8.1, which is educational technology, which is what most people think of when they think of technology. They think of computers, iPads, and certain technological devices. And then we also have Standard 8.2, which is our main focus. So our main focus is design technology, or what we are calling STEM. So I put some examples of standards that, or CPIs that fall under each of these. So you can see, for example, educational technology, constructing a spreadsheet, entering data, creating graphs and charts. So that's all the computer aspect. And then the design and technology, if you look at the last one, describing how parts of a common toy or tool interact and work as part of a system. So as I mentioned, Standard 8.1, which is educational technology, we infuse that into how we teach our design technology curriculum. So the students are utilizing these tools to conduct research. In the middle school, the students are using Google Drawing, and they're creating 3D replicas on the computer of their catapults, for example. But they're also taught by the classroom teachers, and all of our teachers are having the kids, utilize Chromebooks or different technology within their classes to do their specific content area as well. So just some examples of how we're integrating 8.1 within our teaching of 8.2. The students always start off with doing some initial research on whatever topic it is that they're working on. So they might be reading articles, watching some videos, and so they might have multiple tabs open and looking at a bunch of different resources, and then, answering some questions or creating presentations to share with the class. So just some examples of how we're integrating that, which is very important within our teaching of 8.2. Katie actually had created this because her kids love Legos, so she kind of put the Lego characters along with the engineering design process that she has up in her classroom. And again, this is our main focus, and I had talked to you earlier about this, having the students focus on the problem, not what the correct answer is, and then work through it, trying to come up with what their solution is and really focusing on that improved step in the engineering design process. Another new set of standards are the next generation science standards. These were being developed as we were developing this program. So we made sure to, align it with the next generation science standards. And one of the main changes with Next Gen is that they want the students to engage in science. And they want students, they actually started really putting engineering design process. You see it in the second bullet. You'll see that all throughout the next generation science standards, getting students to engage in their learning of science, be active participants in their learning of science, utilize the engineering design process, and really be able to appreciate and understand the relationship between engineering, technology, and applying of science. So we are hitting on the next generation science standards in our program, and so now they're out and they're going to be starting to be integrated in our science classes as well. So just to kind of bring this all together before I let the teachers kind of share what they're doing at all the grade levels, this is Bloom's Taxonomy. And Bloom's Taxonomy are skills and abilities that our students are learning and able to do. So starting down at the bottom is simple, kind of remembering of information. And the one thing about what we're really doing here in our STEM classes is our students are all the way up on the top. And this starts from very simple types of skills and abilities and moving all the way up to very complex skills and abilities. And I just kind of pulled out some key words to show you how in our STEM classes, our students are in that create part of the pyramid all the way up at the top. And they're identifying problems, they're brainstorming solutions, they're inventing, they're prototyping and building. And then the most important part, which we're really trying to drive home with our students, is testing it, analyzing it, and redesigning it. So really doing some high-level complex skills. So what's great about this is that our students are learning these higher order skills, but they're learning them in a context. They're able to understand the rigor as well as the relevance. How many times as a teacher, as a student said to you, why am I learning this? Well, our classes allow the kids to see why they're learning it, because they're applying it and they're understanding, oh, this makes sense. Being able to make connections between stuff they've done in math, stuff they've done in science, stuff they've learned in history. Again, seeing that relevance and building relationships, going over to another group. I was walking in Jess's class, I was walking in some of our elementary classes, and the kids were designing, for you guys were doing like the landfills, and they were walking over like, look what I did, I want to show you this. And the kids were walking to each other and sharing things. This was a second grade class, and they were calling each other over and they were sharing like, look at this cool thing that I did. Oh, that didn't work. Let me show you this. And in Jess's class, she has research and development teams, teams within teams, and really helping these kids build relationships. And kids remember things most when they have to teach it to other people, and that's what they're doing. And this just really leads to longer lasting learning. So now I'm going to turn it over to the teachers, and the first person we have is Katie Hadley from Milton Avenue School, and she's going to share a little bit about what she's been doing in the K-3.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm Katie Hadley. I teach K-3 STEM at Milton Avenue School, and we've been doing a lot of different things this year, starting with what is STEM, what is design, what is technology. A lot of the kids, you say the word technology, they say computer, they say iPad, iPhone. Ask them if a magnifying glass is a piece of technology, they're going to tell you no. So we started from square one with what is technology, and they've grown to be able to go through the steps of the engineering design process, to use their engineering notebooks, to write the problem, to write their ideas, to imagine all their solutions, and to really work together. So after we got what is STEM out of the way, we kind of started slowly learning what the engineering design process was. There's 5-year-olds in the program, there's 8-year-olds in the program. So obviously it's a brand new program. So starting from square one with everybody in each grade was definitely a challenge. But starting out, we all did a trophy tower activity, everybody K through 5, and they use straws to hold up a ping pong ball. In Lafayette, I know they use straws to hold up a tennis ball or a baseball. So we did differentiate the activity throughout the different schools, but still learning the engineering design process. In the beginning, they had no idea what it was. They took straws, they took tape, they figured out some way to hold this ping pong ball up. We had to stop and we had to teach them this whole engineering design process. With kindergarten, we did an activity called Save Sammy, and the kids had to figure out a way to help Sammy the spider escape from Larry the lizard, and they could only use pipe cleaners, no tape, no popsicle sticks, just pipe cleaners. And this was one of the ways that we helped save Sammy, and actually when they finished their projects, I had a big piece of bulletin board paper at the front of the room, and we measured how tall each of the structures were, and we talked about why these worked better than other ones, why some couldn't stand up on their own, and then we went from there and with group discussion. First grade, we talked about the 3 billy goats gruff and how to save the 3 billy goats. So some groups created rafts to get back across the river, some groups created a zip line to get back across the river. Same thing, they had to identify the problem and think about ways that they could help the 3 billy goats, Sammy the spider, solve the problem. Second grade, we talked about the 3 little pigs, bringing the literature into the classroom. So we read the 3 little pigs, and we talked about, all right, the big bad wolf is coming back. How can we help these 3 little pigs escape? So each group used recyclable materials to build an escape house for the 3 little pigs, and they ended up creating a newspaper, and each class is a part of this newspaper. They have pictures of their houses. They explained how they worked. We talked about money and the prices of houses and what they think their houses should cost. And then third grade, we talked about bigger float boats. And we said, okay, we have a problem. You've discovered a buried treasure. How can you get as many pennies as you can back to land? So this boat was made by 4 third-grade girls, and it actually held 89 pennies. So it was by far the most out of the entire third grade, but that was pretty impressive. After they kind of got this whole engineering design process down pat, we talked about problem solving, teamwork, building confidence, and every day they're like, they ask, can we pick our own groups? Do we get to work together? Are we working by ourselves? And they've grown to the point that they don't complain who they're working with. They want to work together. They want to be successful with each other. So we've graduated now to thematic units. If you can see pictures, Danielle talked about the thematic units in K-5 a little bit earlier. Kindergartners, there's pictures of them making birds' nests. The birds needed a place to live. What could we build to help them have a habitat? Second grade is focusing on water pollution right now. They're doing research on recycling. They're learning how to make our environment a healthy, happy place. First grade in the bottom right are building agricultural tools. There's a new crop that they had to harvest, and there was no tool that they had to help them harvest this crop. So they made their own crops, and they made different tools to help them discover a little styrofoam ball crop from the sand. And third grade is talking about water conservation, and cleaning water treatment. Their big project that they just finished was creating water filters to clean dirty water, and we tested the pH of the water to see if our activated carbon and our materials did, in fact, do the job to solve the problem. So this is Lafayette for 4th and 5th grade.
Unfortunately, Kyle couldn't be here today, so I'm going to kind of just share a little bit about what he was doing. So in the beginning, like I mentioned, the students gained access to Google accounts and, Google Apps for Education. So, he used the beginning part of his class to have the kids focus on conducting research for their specific topics. So in 4th grade, it's solar energy and renewable energy, and in 5th grade, it's transportation and infrastructure. So he had the kids conduct research, watch some videos online from sites that he had already pre-selected. He had them learn how to use Google Drive and Google Docs to answer some questions. Then they used the data that they got from their research, and they went onto Google Sheets and learned how to create charts to really represent the data the best way they could. And then they learned how to use Google Slides in order to present the data to the rest of their classmates. Similar to what Katie was saying, you know, our students here right now, they all have kind of the same baseline. So every year we're obviously going to be changing up kind of how we move through the program, but they also started off there with a trophy tower design. They did use a different, you know, object that they were going to be displaying, and they were doing a little bit more research into, you know, what makes a strong foundation. Like we mentioned, they're using like straws and paper and tape. And what is adequate support? And he was really trying to link this into some real life scenarios and real world problems that they could be solving. They also did a watercraft design, focusing on buoyancy, displacement, and weight distribution. So those are just some photos of the students. And then recently, I was actually just in the classes, the kids were using the makey boards that we had and learning about circuitry. So he did a tennis ball activity where the kids kind of started off with watching a quick brain pop video to learn about what circuits are. And then they did a hands-on interactive activity where they all stood in a circle, and then they all had a tennis ball, and that was the current, and they were passing the current around and seeing how that actually worked, and then translated that into creating a circuit using the makey boards and simple aluminum foil in order to control video games. So I walked in, the kids are playing Pac-Man, and they're using their makey boards and their different controllers that they were able to create in his classes. And now we have Jess at the middle school.
Hello. I got it. Put that guy down. Okay, so I do teach robotics, computer-aided design, and computer coding, and in 6th grade we do the robotics, and there's a couple pictures of them up there. In 6th grade we do the Lego EV3 robots, which are the ones that you see on the table. The ones from my 6th graders are these two. There's one here, and they are very decorated. And I have one over here. This one I'll show you guys in a second. And the primary goal that I have for the 6th graders is to get them to not only understand the structure that they need to build and create, but also to get them to understand the fundamentals of programming with the Lego EV3 software. So the first thing we do is we get them to build the robot. We do a few small design challenges, and their first major robotics challenge is to create a robot that can do a dance. So that's what they're decorated for right now, which is why I wanted to mention that. And these robots here were programmed to dance, and I do have a Bruno Mars robot. He has sunglasses on. I don't know if you guys can see that. He has sunglasses on, and this particular group programmed this robot to react to seeing different colors. So I'll show you guys that in just a second. But the ultimate goal is I have the 6th graders working on a project where they will create a package delivery system, and we actually send the robots out into the hallway in the middle school, and they have a target area, and the robots will carry this cube in a gate that they all have in the front of their robot. They'll carry this cube, and their objective is to get this cube to be dropped off in a square that's taped off on the floor, to release the package at the certain point, turn around, and return to their beginning target area. And that simulates, I don't know if you guys have heard of like the Amazon drones and all that new stuff that they're coming out with. So trying to get the kids to understand how can they program this to not only just move and do silly dances, but also to get it to specifically place an object, turn around, return. How can we get it to make this movement? What do we need to do to make it lift up the gate? How does the robot know when it's released the package? And the robot actually has sensors, and it can see when the package has been released. So when there's nothing in front of its eyes, as the kids like to call it, when it doesn't see the box anymore, it knows that it's released the package, and it can turn around and it can return. So I'm going to just show you guys real quick. This guy turns on and he moves when he sees the color blue. So right now the program is running, and if I hold up the blue color, I can hold up any other color, it won't react, but if I hold up the blue, it runs my fingers over, and it'll start moving, and it does do a dance. And I know this piece fell off, but got a little beat up in the bag. So it does do a dance, and this is one of the ones that they programmed to dance with. So I'm going to put that guy back down. And they will go through the entire design process for that project as well as the package delivery system, and they do the reflection, and there is a lot of, again, teamwork and collaboration. They're always checking out each other's programs. How can I help you? How can you help me? And they do talk together amongst the different groups to see who needs help and where they can, I guess, give some valuable feedback. In CAD class, this is CAD, we do 3D modeling in the computer. And in CAD class, I wish I had it to show you guys, but I did have a 3D rendering, and unfortunately it was not coming up on the computer. But we do a big project. This is the project that Danielle mentioned. I break the students up into research and development teams, engineers, and project managers. And their goal as a classroom is to create a class set of Legos. And this class set of Legos, they have to be able to snap their Lego together with their classmates' Legos. So in order to do that, they have to research and find very specific measurements for their Legos. And not only that, when they do get them to snap together, they're actually creating a design that they determine before right at the beginning of the project. They're actually redesigning the letters CMS with a special symbol or character, and they're kind of making a little sign. And if everything snaps together, they will be able to assemble this together as a class if their measurements are all correct. And I do have in my hand, since I can't show you guys the 3D rendering that I want to show you, I can pass this around. The black ones here, if you guys would like to check it out, I'll put it over here. The black ones are 3D printed, and the colorful ones, the white and red, those are regular Legos. So you can see that the kids did a really great job getting precise measurements, so precise that they were able to snap together with regular Legos. So if you guys want to check that out, you can pass that around. So, and in our 8th grade coding class, we actually did a really cool project in collaboration with, you guys could take them apart if you want to. Take them apart, put them back together. We did a really cool collaboration project with the 5th grade class, Kyle Kermick's class at Lafayette. And I had my 8th graders create video games to help Kyle Kermick's class learn about solar energy. And my 8th graders, when they created these programs and these video games, Kyle's class actually researched facts about solar energy, sent them over to my 8th graders. My 8th graders created a fun, entertaining video game out of the facts that Kyle's 5th graders researched, and we sent those video games back to Kyle's classroom for his students to play. So it helped them learn a little bit about solar energy, and it also allowed my 8th graders, as part of our design process, to get valuable feedback from our project, not only from people within the classroom. We actually had a Skype session with the 5th graders so that they could give my 8th graders feedback on what they thought of the games, which games were fun, which ones were difficult to play, which ones they liked the most, which ones they didn't like too much, and what they overall thought about the projects and how my 8th graders could improve for the next time. And we actually recently did another coding project just like that in the previous marking period. We actually sent video games that we created, math games for 3rd graders in a school in Japan just outside of Tokyo. And because there was a very big time difference on the other side of the world, they had pre-recorded messages, and we were sending some video messages back and forth, and they did receive feedback from the 3rd graders in Japan on their video games. And I believe they created Pac-Man math games, my 8th graders, and that's what we sent over to Japan. So they had a chance to play that and get a little bit of feedback from the 3rd graders and see how much they like the game. And also, our newest addition to the 8th grade coding class in the middle school is Winston, which he already said hello to you guys. Winston is beginning to be programmed by our 8th graders, and they've been working on getting him to he's been doing the morning announcements with our 8th graders. They've been coding him for that, and also working on filling up his artificial intelligence with different responses and different reactions to different stimuli. So if you guys give me just a second, I'm going to see if I can get Winston to talk for just a second. Let's see if he'll... Hey. Nope, don't look at your toes. Winston. Come on. So we are working on his artificial intelligence and filling him up with different responses to certain questions and things. So those are just a couple things that we have in there for right now. We still obviously have to get him to know his own name, so we're getting there. That's a. Do you want me to stand him up? Yes. Winston. No, don't look over there. Hi. Can you stand up? Can you stand up? Nope. Looks like no. I don't think he's going to stand up. Can you stand up?
Do you want me to stand up?
Yes.
All right, here I come.
So he can stand up by himself. I could ask him if I wanted to have a seat, but I'm not going to word that in a way so that he'll do that. But I could ask him to have a seat if I wanted to. And there's a few other things that he does. And I have a couple 8th graders also working on getting him prepared to make an appearance at the science fair. He's going to be hopefully throwing a ball and playing fetch with humans, and having the human fetch the ball and bring the ball back to him so he can throw it again, and a few other different games that we've been working on. So that's what we're doing in the middle school. And pass this up to Julie.
Great. Oh, thank you. Good evening. I'm Julie Ryan. I am one of the technology teachers at the high school level. Currently, I am teaching our CAD 1 class, so computer-aided drafting and design, our intro to robotics, as well as website design. So we have a lot of courses at the high school. We're really growing and evolving together, discussing our vertical articulation with our K-8 program and how we're going to bring that up through the high school level with the more advanced classes. So currently, my courses are a little more introductory, but once just the students start to come up with this robotics background, with this coding background, I'm foreseeing that these classes are going to grow and evolve as the years go on. So on the screen right now is just a couple examples of projects that we're doing in the Introduction to CAD class. It's a little dark, the image on the left-hand side, but I give the students about 13 different parts that they have to recreate in CAD, including the body of a train, the stack, the cow plow, its wheels, the assembly for the wheels, and then they actually have to go ahead, create a full assembly, so bringing all those files together, making them connect, and then they actually create a packet or a tutorial of the parts that they created so they could then pass it to the students after them. So if their parts are precise and they've done everything properly, the next group of CAD students could come in, use their tutorials, and recreate the exact same process. So that one's a little more structured. They're coming in, that's their first real assembly project, and they're learning the fundamentals of CAD, why it's so important, how we use it in the engineering world, the design world. And then we jump into a little more free-forming, letting them a little more creative, and a little bit of an introduction to the 3D printer. Fortunately, 3D printers are not immediate. It's not instant gratification and you just get a project right out. They take a little bit of time. So with 50 or 75 Intro to CAD students, we're not able to print every single project we could ever make because we'd run out of a school year. But this project, we kind of set it up as a class competition. So I told them that I wanted them to create a phone stand, a creative-looking phone stand to sit on their desk and be a tinker toy, get something to start a conversation when someone comes up to your desk, but it to serve a purpose. So we're also connected to our devices and our phones, that why not have it sitting, staring at you at a proper viewing angle, so we're not straining our necks any further than we already are, so we're not hunched at our computer, so that when your phone does light up, even though they're not supposed to use them in school, it's a quick glance and you know what's going on, and then you can go back to your work. So the students created a variety of things, whether it be what looks like a human with a pack on his back to hold its phone, or the two examples of the elephant and the minion from Despicable Me, that would allow it to sit at the proper angle for viewing. And they determined that, again, like Danielle Romero was saying, they're using math in class, they're not realizing it. We're talking about cosine, and they're like, how are you fitting this into this class? This was supposed to be fun. You're making us do trig, and it's evolving, and they're seeing an application for it, and it's becoming very challenging, insightful, and creative.
And then at the end of this project, we brought them all up on the projector. They saw the entire class's designs. They talked through them, what they liked about them, what could have been done better. And then they voted on them, and anyone who wanted to print them did. But we printed the top 3 designs in the class, so they had something to walk away with, something to show students around the school what's going on in the tech classes. And then, in theory, have something to sit on their desk at home to hold their phones. We also brought in the CAD 2 teacher who has the 3D printer in his room, Jason Mariano, and we talked through what steps we would need to do to improve these, how the 3D printer works, and what process might need to be fixed. The Minion has little pieces of hair sprouting out. They weren't quite big enough for the 3D printer to replicate. So the students went through and modified them, talked with Mr. Mariano about what could go on in CAD 2 to get them evolving through our classes and keeping them in the department to see even more applications of CAD. And then in our robotics class, we're also using the EV3 platform, which were courtesy of the Chatham Education Foundation, a grant we received last year to bring them into the classroom this year. And we're using the same platform that Jess is using in the middle school. We're doing very similar challenges in the beginning, making sure they're understanding the basics of programming and breaking down those basic ideas, the big ideas. Giving them a problem, being like, you can't think you're going to solve that problem day one. You have to break it up into steps. Solve those steps, go through that design loop for each of those steps with your partners, and then come up with a solution. So some of the projects that you see were on the left-hand side. They're using sensors to follow the line. So I tell them, your robots have to go through a factory. They have to follow the line on the factory to make sure they don't take out workers or different warehouse structures. I don't think my students eat up my cheesy design challenges. Like the middle school students, they're just like, make us just follow the line. We don't need to hear your backstory. But they go through, they determine how to get it around sharp angles, what precision needs to be there in their programming, and then they move on to more advanced projects. So the 2 you see, just little creatures that you can kind of make out of the Legos. And the example right here, our elephant, which is our kind of capstone of the course. It is a lot to build this elephant. There's a lot of steps involved, but the students see a lot of programming. There's gear trains, there's floating gear trains, rack and pinion underneath them. So they're seeing how the transformation of rotary motion to a more linear step will allow their robot to move. And unfortunately, the tech teacher is having technical difficulties because there's a Bluetooth interference going on. But you will be able to see just the robot doing a simple process that the kids programmed. So this robot on a good day does actually walk. So they had it programmed so it would walk, make its elephant noises, and actually go to a specified location and pick up what looks like a little toy. And then the students went a step further, and they told me that they wanted to create something to control this, so it wasn't just in a pre-programmed one doing what they told it to do from the computer. They wanted to be able to control it as it was moving. So 2 of my students went on to create this device that actually sends signals to that robot, and it allows it to walk. I'm sorry, these aren't connecting in this building when we're off our signal at the high school. But typically when this is running well, I can pull this trigger and my robot would start walking. I can hit our touch sensor and it would allow that elephant trunk to raise, make its noise again. I can control things more independently. So they put a wheel on here for show, but it's actually going to turn that large motor and program this one over here to do other tasks. So it was very exciting to see not only like I gave them just the Lego elephant at first, but them to go steps further, what they want to do, what they wanted to create. And this class really allows them to evolve, build, and continue on. I did not put pictures of website design on there because you don't need to be reading code in the evening hours. But the students are really learning. I proofread a lot of code during the day. I don't need to read code right now. But they're evolving and learning how to create websites. So we had the students create what would be an online resume that they could then take their link to their website that they created and send it to employment opportunities or the college boards to review their work, their activities, their sports that they did throughout their high school career, to give them a more interactive way to show off who they are and what they've created, rather than just a front and back resume that kind of gets shuffled through the process. we collaboratively actually got their websites running. So we were able to work with our IT department over the last couple of months. So now we have a host domain site for any students that take the website design classes or create websites during their high school career. So we'll be able to get them actually up and running so that they can see their websites when they're not sitting at the Chatham High School network. So we're doing a lot of big things, moving. Really great stuff coming through. I'm going to pass it back. Thank you.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit. I just wanted to thank everybody, for coming and showing off a lot of the great projects that our students are doing. So as Julie had mentioned, we're continually revising and updating our curriculum based off of what's coming from our K-8 program. So, we're making changes at each level, adjusting the rigor based off of students' prior knowledge and experience. We also were able to successfully add 3 more classes at Chatham High School for next year, because this current year we've made a lot of changes K-8. So next year we're adding 3 new courses up at the high school. The first being Animation and Movement, which is a new computer science or coding class. And it's basically an introduction to computer animation programming. We got a couple more of our little Winstons that we're going to be using. The students are going to be using that as a platform in order to do computer animation programming. And it's really an alternative for those students who are not really sure if they're into computer science and who might not think they want to go on the advanced placement track. There's been a lot of interest so far, so we're going to be running a couple of sections of that for next year. Honors Computer Science Principles is another class that we're going to be adding. So this is how students can kind of explore computing and how to kind of develop problem-solving skills using computer science and programming. This actually is being developed based off of the College Board's Computer Science Principles course, which is slated to be an advanced placement course the following school year. And another course that we're adding is the Advanced Robotics Class that Julie will be teaching next year. And this is going to really kind of be more than working with Legos. It's going to allow students to build custom robotic devices using CAD, like you saw her showing before, computer programming and construction materials such as Tetrix. And the students can actually utilize these to participate in the FIRST Technology or FTC challenges. So those are our 3 new courses. A couple of changes we're making for the following school year. We're going to change up the sequence at the middle school. We're going to make App Design a 7th grade class, and we're going to move Grand Design Challenge, which is a little bit more of a capstone class, to the 8th grade. So that's one minor change at the middle school for the upcoming school year. This is kind of showing you what our new course sequence will look like up at the high school, reflecting the new classes that we're adding. So you'll see that the video production classes have stayed the same, and now we have a robotic sequence of robotics and advanced robotics. So that one being our new course. And computer science is going to undergo a bunch of changes for next year. So you have your new animation and movement class. You still have your advanced placement track, going all the way to advanced placement computer science, which it looks like, fingers crossed, we'll be able to run 2 sections of next year, so that's really exciting. And our new Honors Computer Science Principles course. I just wanted to share some noteworthy numbers. I was going through our enrollment as well as the students at the high school have, input their course requests. So, a lot of people are very familiar with the gender gap in STEM careers. And so in the United States, it's about 75% male to 25% female in the STEM careers. Here in Chatham High School, we've made that a little bit closer. So we're about 60% male to 40% female up at the high school for the upcoming school year based off of our students' requests. The middle school, we don't have the student requests yet for next year, but we're about 63% male, 37% female. What's a great thing is at the elementary school, we're pretty much 50-50 because all students are taking our classes. So we're hoping to see that as the students, meet these teachers, work through our STEM classes, and start moving through and taking iSTEM in 6th grade. We're going to start to see these numbers really even out. And a great jump that we've seen for next year is our Intro to Computer Science 2 class, which this year was 70% male and 30% female. Next year we're going to be 58% male and 42% female. So that was a big jump and something that I think we're starting to make some changes. So that's great. So that's all we had for you guys tonight. So I wanted to thank you all for joining us. Karen, do you have anything you want to?
There's no doubt that you are all providing wonderful learning experiences for our children, so I just want to thank you for coming to share all the wonderful things, and we will keep you updated. If you want to review the presentation in greater detail, it will be posted on the website, and I believe the video will be posted there as well. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the regular Board of Ed meeting to order. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm happy to say it didn't snow, didn't rain, didn't hail on us. First Board of Ed meeting in a while that hasn't happened. First, I'd like to take care of some housekeeping business. Yeah, we do have to do it one more time. So the New Jersey Open Publics Meeting Act, in accordance with the requirements of the Open Publics Meeting Act, Chapter 231 PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice and to attend meetings of the public body at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board of Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the Independent Press. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind doing roll call?
Mr. Gilfield. Here. Mr. Belvin. Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Connors. Ms. Curley. Mr. Crane.
Here.
Ms. Jane.
Here.
Mr. Nonmaker.
Here.
And Mr. Weber.
Yes, here. Thank you very much. Ms. Chase, is Winston able to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
He is right in New York. We're ready? Okay.
Do I have to introduce him?
He's going to introduce himself.
Oh, excellent.
Hello, my name is Winston.
Could everybody please stand?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I start?
Yes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Winston.
Thank you.
Show off. Now you're just showing off.
You.
Was that programmed by a student, or does he come somewhat prepackaged?
That one I did because that one we had programmed for the board meeting for a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
Canceled, so I did that one because it was before the students had seen them.
Oh, very good. Thank you. This is.
Yes, thank you.
And we just had an open curriculum meeting, and Winston was demoed at the curriculum meeting talking about the STEM and design technology. So, thank you very much for bringing in your presentation. I do not have any opening comments now. I will make some comments later in the meeting. Moving on to administrative reports. Dr. LaSousa?
Thank you, Ms. Weber. I actually don't have anything to report tonight, except that I was just thinking how a year ago, none of the 4 women who presented for the last hour were even employed in the district. And it's really great to see what can happen when people come together and you get some wind at your back, and the fact that this is a brand new program, less than a year old, picked up in September. I think there are a lot of good things happening for the kids, and there are there's a lot of exposure that they are getting in our district right now to these fields in design and technology that previous students didn't enjoy. So it's really great to see.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. DeQuilla, Business Administrator?
Yes, the only thing I'd like to report is that although we have nice weather today, the winter weather has wreaked a little havoc on our baseball field. As of end of business today, the maintenance crew had the field ready for a play. So the varsity baseball team is ready. We are still waiting on the contractor to come to do some infield work and some work on the mound that is a result of a generous contribution from the athletic boosters. But barring inclement weather, we are ready for tomorrow's opening day.
And can I just ask a qualifying question? Ready to play adequate or ready to play stellar, somewhere in between? Do we still need to do?
I won't comment on the play, but the field is adequate, but still does need some work on the infield, which we're waiting for the contractor.
Okay, but safe.
Safe. The delay of the contractor is, believe it or not, the vendor that produces the clay cannot ship the clay because it is too wet. So they are waiting for the clay to dry out. So the The contractor that's coming to work on the infield can't even get clay at this point.
Okay.
So that's delaying. The stock that kudos goes to our maintenance department, because they had the idea of the small supply that we had, they were putting in the dump trucks and storing small loads at a time and storing it in the garage at night so that it would dry out.
Okay.
And then they've been using that to fill in the barren spots and, to make the infield playable. So kudos again to our maintenance staff for thinking a little out of the box and getting the field ready. It is not in Yankee Stadium condition, but we're getting there.
That's all right. Okay, as long as it's safe. Mr. Connors, did you have any questions to follow up on that?
No, I know this is going to be a topic of discussion at the boosters. I was going to mention this. I can't make the booster meeting tomorrow night, so I'm going to urge that someone from the board attend. This will be a topic of conversation. I've seen an exchange of emails. It's a buzz topic. They were here to express their concerns regarding the condition of the field. Their other concerns will be that they had a contractor lined up willing to do the work, and I believe a decision was made that we would try to do it internally with regard to the upgrades on the field. So it's going to be a contentious issue. So hopefully someone will be able to attend the booster meeting tomorrow night and be prepared, because
Is it at the regular time or pushed back?
yes, no, it's regular time, 7 o'clock tomorrow. Again, I'm going to be out of state, so I can't make it. I told the president I can't make it. And I would urge that whoever attend the meeting spend a few minutes with the business administrator so we can explain to you, and I will tonight afterwards as well. But they have some issues, and they're going to be expressed pretty vocally tomorrow night.
Just to reassure you, I have traded emails with both Paul Anello and Dan Moskowitz. They are aware of the situation. The contractor that is hired to do the work is one that the boosters did suggest. And the debate, and we followed the advice of the contractor to wait into the spring to redo the mound and the clay, because they weren't sure how it would hold up over the winter. So in hindsight, the work hasn't been done, but in hindsight, I'm not sure how it would have held up to all the weather anyway, so.
And Mr. Libera's in the loop?
Yes, Bill has been copied on it, and I know Dan has personally thanked John Cataldo for all of the work that they've done to get the field ready, by this afternoon.
Okay. I open it to somebody on the board they can cover or attend tomorrow's meeting.
I'll try and make it. Now that you said it was going to be contentious, that was quite a sell.
Well, I don't want you walking in. I'm not going to sandbag and let you walk into something that's not. I mean, they've got issues, and
Maybe we can chat with Peter after.
Yes, and after this, then the three. If you're going to be it, if Jill, you, then we'll talk. I know the athletic director has been informed lockstep with what was being done, but there will be some heated comments.
Okay.
I wish I could go, but
I'll bet. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for? I guess you can't purchase dry sand. Is that
clay.
clay?
Clay, not at this point.
Seems like a business waiting to happen. Dry clay. Okay, very good. No other questions. We're going to move on to the committee reports. Ms. Kenny for personnel.
Personnel has not met since our last meeting.
Okay. Going over to Ms. Cronin for curriculum. Oh, I'm sorry, she's not here. We just had an open curriculum meeting where we went over design, technology, some of the STEM courses, K to 12. Each of the teachers at each of the buildings went through a lot of the course curriculum and showed examples. Ms. Chase, actually, I just have a quick question. I know it's early on in the registration process at the high school, and I believe registration just began today at the middle school. Are we seeing, and again, part of the goal is to expose 4 more students to the problem-solving process. Are we seeing increased enrollment in the classes where students have choices?
Yes, and I believe the one that I actually took note of was the new animation and movement course, where we see a lot of enrollment, and students who may not have traditionally gone into the traditional intro to computer science programming route are actually choosing that class. So we're seeing them more inclusive of different types of learners and students being more interested.
Okay, excellent. And I noticed from the slides the gender gap is leveling out quickly here in Chatham. Does anybody else have any questions on the curriculum topic? No? Moving on to finance and facilities, Mr. Gilfillan.
We haven't met since our last meeting, and I don't think we meet for another 2 weeks, right?
Mr. Belding is not here for policy and planning. We have not had a meeting since our last board meeting.
I believe it's 2 weeks from this Wednesday.
Okay, so 2 weeks out is the next meeting. Moving on to liaison reports, Mr. Connors.
Nothing to report on behalf of the borough. However, when is that presentation, Mike, that we're going before the council?
Next Monday.
13th.
Next Monday? Okay. No, I can definitely come down. Nothing other than that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Rich. Sorry. The township, Ms. Clark?
Nothing to report from the township.
Okay, very good. Athletic boosters, Mr. Connors.
Nothing to report since the last meeting other than to repeat the invite someone to that meeting tomorrow night, and I believe that'll be Joe.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Music and theater boosters, that's myself. So the Chatham High School Theater Department has been nominated for seven Montclair Theater Night Awards for the production of Firebirds and Snow Angels, which was a pair of one acts that the theater department performed in November. So the seven achievements are achievement in acting ensemble, overall production of a high school play, production of a comedy, achievement in scene design, achievement in lighting, and achievement in direction. The awards will be announced at Montclair State University on May 11, so fantastic honor. There's 75 high schools that competed and submitted productions. So we received seven of those nominations. Also, congratulations to Chatham High School violinist Megan Sitaram, who auditioned and has been accepted to the 2015 New Jersey All-State Orchestra, and also a middle school violinist, Sophia Andros, has also auditioned and been accepted to the Junior Orchestra. On Thursday night, this Thursday, April 9th, the Chatham High School Honors Program will perform. Part of the honors programs, they have to do 2 recitals, and they're very complex, very difficult pieces. So there's several requirements where they have to do some independent study, some hands-on project, additional independent research, but this is kind of their capstone and the culmination of their musical career here at Chatham High School. So if you have an opportunity to pop in for all or some of it, it's really a phenomenal performance. And these are very difficult pieces that they select. They can't do puff pieces or throw themselves up softballs. These are very, very complex pieces that have to be approved, and they practice most of the year for this recital. So if you get a chance, please come out and watch the high schoolers. The 6th Annual Jazz in the Middle Festival will be held on Thursday, April 23rd at the Chatham Middle School Auditorium. This is a CMS jazz band members under the direction of Christy Spriggs. Will be hosting the middle school jazz band from Nutley, Montgomery, Lapacon, Alexandria, Burnsville, Bridgewater, Raritan, and Scotch Plains, and they will all be adjudicated during their performances. That's my music theater boosters report. Moving on to Chatham Education Foundation, Ms. Kenny.
Yes, nothing to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nonamaker, Recreation.
Nothing to report.
And District Cabinet meeting, there has not been a meeting, has there, Mike?
We did have a meeting last week.
Okay.
Ms. Cronin was not able to attend, but the majority of the discussion revolved around the referendum.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. I'd like to make a motion to move the minutes of the Board of Education meeting from March 23rd, the public session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstentions are?
Abstain.
Okay, excellent. 2 abstentions. Thank you. We have our first opportunity for public commentary. If you wouldn't mind stepping over, this side has the microphone. Oh, sorry, it's there. If you wouldn't mind signing in, introduce yourself, and if you could speak into the mic so we can have it on the record.
Good evening. I'm Alan Ruth, Chatham Township. On behalf of Chatham Education Foundation, I'm pleased to present some grant checks to the district tonight. The largest one is for over $9,000 for 28 Chromebooks for the Lafayette Avenue School Library. The second largest one is the last installment on a district grant, which was actually made in 2013 for the Future Focused Education series of speakers that the school district is bringing in, and that's $6,000. So we're making the last installment on that grant. And then 2 grants for Southern Boulevard School, one for $1,032 for a reading workshop materials, and $770 for something called boogie boards, which I don't think have anything to do with surfing, but I think they're for reading. So altogether, the grants that we're presenting tonight are $17,371, and that brings the total disbursements for this fiscal year, for the school year, to almost $99,000. So I expect at the next board meeting next month, we'll probably cross the $100,000 mark. So congratulations to the teachers of the school district for submitting such terrific grants. And thank you to all of the terrific donors who made this possible by donating to Chatham Education Foundation.
Thank you very much.
I am Richard Reardon. I live in Chatham Borough. I spoke 2 weeks ago, and I ran out of time, so I just want to finish up on that last segment that I was going to bring up. I know this is going to be the middle school auditorium, but it seems to be a lot more grandiose than that, which is what it purports to be. And I know in looking now through some of the material about the Performing Arts Center, and that it would recoup money because it could be rented. The middle school, the wall property, there is no, quote, governmental property unzoned in the borough. It's R2. Middle school's R2. A Performing Arts Center is not a permitted use. So if the board is thinking that it will be able to lease out a piece of property and recoup some money, it's going to need the approval of the planning board or the zoning board, whichever place your attorney wishes to take you. And maybe, Dr., you've already been informed by board counsel that that would be a requirement. I don't know. I just want the board to consider that, because that is a requirement.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reardon.
Okay,
you don't have to, I'm not cutting you off.
Oh.
Please finish. There's no time. There's no line. So.
Well, no, I just, I ran out of time, and I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, because as I started to look through things, there was a comment, well, we can make money, we can rent this space out, and it'll be something that will be a generator to keep the taxes down. And the only reason I bring that up is, up until the master plan of 1978, all government property in the borough was unzoned, whether it would be board of education property or whether it was like the public works department or anything owned by the government was unzoned. And the planning board at that time made a decision to zone the property, since it was a residential community and there was no big ratables, so that any government property would be rezoned to the contiguous properties. So since it's R2, it's R2. That was one of the reasons when regionalization came down, that the borough board of ed at that time thought, oh, we have a nice piece of property, we'll sell it. And I pointed out to them at that time, the only person in the market for it was going to be the borough. And that really runs into the same situation here. If you plan to use this other than for school purposes, you're going to need approval, a variance approval, from whichever board your attorney wishes you to go before. Okay? That's all I wanted to
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reardon. Thank you for coming back.
Well, I'll just comment right now, we do use school district properties. We do have a user of facilities policy on the website, and outside groups do use the middle school at times, and we do charge them fees for their use. So this would be an additional portion of the middle school. We do that in all of our school buildings from time to time. So we can get further clarification from our attorney about what rights we have and all of that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Loofborough, and I have kids at Milton Avenue Middle School and High School. And I just have to say, well, first of all, I'd like to go back to school to take some of these classes. But second of all, I just want to say, wow, you have done an incredible job in the last 2 years integrating technology and STEM into our curriculum in ways that went far beyond what many of us parents were hoping for. And 2 years ago, we stood before you and said, these kids need to learn to code. And you have done way more than that. The robot that you just demonstrated was much more savvy than the one we saw at University of Pennsylvania on a visit 2 years ago in their robotics department. And I'm just really, really impressed. So congratulations and thank you, and you did an exceptional job.
Thank you, Ms. Chase. That robot does a ton more. I've seen that demo before.
I'm Jane Devlin, Chatham Township. Hello. I wanted to speak that I found it frustrating and disappointing that some teachers chose to assign homework during the Good Friday, Passover, Easter holidays. Again, it seemed like the lines between school and family time were blurred, and there lacked a distinction that students should work hard, nose to the grindstone, but also be given time to stop, rest, rejuvenate, reflect, and restore. Again, I do have to state I share the value of academic excellence and achievement, but would question at what cost, just how much is enough. At what point do we say you worked your darndest, you did your best, everything isn't one huge competition or race with the measure of success being the title you have or the money you make or the citation you pin on the wall. It never seems like there is any genuine opportunity for the pupils or developing youth to really stop, get away from schoolwork, break, and recharge. And with that goal in mind, I would urge that spring break be a true break and there be a blackout period from homework or academics. I'm certain in the scheme of our whole lives, taking periods when we can rest and reflect won't contribute to an individual's or this town's downfall. Perhaps to the contrary, it might promote well-being and allow us to get more in touch, or as it's now called, be more mindful. And mindfulness promotes health, combats stress, facilitates creativity, and speaks to empathy, sparks ingenuity, and makes for better functioning folks. And in a nod to the preceding STEM presentation, just how inventive, creative, thinking out of the box, and imaginative can we expect kids to be if they are always tired or if they lack free time to dream, to imagine, to create? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Jane, can I ask a question? I'm just curious. I have a second semester senior, so that's not a fair judge because he's totally not killing himself. I could use a little more stress in his life. I'm just curious, is there a particular school, K-3, the middle school, high school, or is this just a general?
I can't speak specific to the K-3 because I'm away from it now, and I do have to say I haven't done as much investigation. I just think I speak broadly, let's say Lafayette, through the high school. It's not a particular teacher, it's not a particular class. I think, like I said, it's more a mindset or a philosophy. It's not a specific concern or a complaint. It's more broad strokes.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Tom, if you could strike that comment I made about my son, that'd be great. Too late?
I'm sure he's watching.
No, he's not. He's playing Xbox.
Hi, I'm Amanda Feeman. I live in Chatham Township. I just wanted to take a brief moment to thank Dr. L'Souza for taking the time to meet with the preschool population to go over the budget and the referendum and to talk about what would be the path forward for full-day kindergarten if we were to build additional classrooms and the additional space. I think it was very helpful to the preschool population to understanding what the next steps are, and to gaining a better understanding and getting their questions answered with respect to the referendum. So I really appreciate the openness and the time in consideration and tolerating a bunch of 2-year-olds and opening up the community room for everybody to run around to feel a part of the district. I think it was very, very helpful. I would also like to take a moment to say I spoke personally about visiting the elementary schools, but I feel like I would like to broaden this comment to parents who are looking at this referendum and challenging whether or not this district is truly focused on curriculum and providing our students with the appropriate academic setting versus facilities. I have been to lots of private schools over the course of this year. And if you are feeling as if our district is not focused on curriculum, I would encourage you to go visit several of the top private schools in the area, because you may come back to our district and you may be very refreshed to feel that our administration is focused on getting the right programming, staying one step ahead, making our kids as current and up to speed as they possibly can be. Now, are we a public school, and do we have some different requirements than private schools, such as testing? That's the way of life. That's public school. So is it going to be perfect? Probably not. But I will tell you that I think we are getting a tremendous amount for our dollar. Those of us who are supporting full-day kindergarten do feel that the referendum is, for the long haul, truly investing and providing a good value to the community from a space standpoint, a field standpoint, and a programming standpoint. So I just wanted to open that up as someone who has been in from the lower level grades looking at curriculum and also looking down the path forward for my children, because they're going to end up in high school. So I wanted to leave it with that and thank the board for the consideration and taking the time for our group to hear our concerns as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda, how many folks were at that meeting? I'm sorry I didn't mean to catch you walking away.
I think we ended up with about 20. I mean, it was a pretty full room. We got some questions after that. Some parents didn't attend because they already.
Sure.
Some of them crossed over from PTO meetings, so they didn't just go into the preschool. I think one of the things that we did get asked from that meeting were some good suggestions from people to provide information to the daycares and to stuff bags from the flyers, just because lots of people just don't have access to it like they do from the PTO. Right. So I think it was a good discussion to get feedback from people in that room, just on what information they're getting and what they're not. In addition to just talking about our topic, but it.
Thank you.
And we did push out the video to our population to 400 people. So anybody who didn't attend, LaSouza, Alan was gracious enough to tape it, and we pushed that out to our supporters, and we did get some questions after that for the follow-up.
Oh, very good. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Libby Hilton Ref, 37 Weston Avenue in the borough, and I just have a question now that the wording of the ballot has come out. Are the classrooms that are being built at the elementary schools designated for kindergarten?
Well, they have bathrooms, so they're not designated yet, but they're being built with bathrooms, which is a requirement for kindergarten.
Okay. So somebody reading the ballot wouldn't know that, right? It doesn't say that there's bathrooms being built there. Are they intended for full-day kindergarten, or?
I apologize. I haven't seen the ballot, so I'm not sure what it says.
Oh, I have a copy here.
No, you could.
It's on the school website.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess I'm basically questioning the wording of the ballot, because it doesn't mention that there are bathrooms in those classrooms and that they're going to be used for full-day kindergarten potentially. And the other thing that it doesn't mention is an auditorium or a performing arts center. It just says additions to the middle school. And so I was wondering a couple of things. I know that this wording from the March 9th meeting went out to the county superintendent's office, and they published the ballot. And there's also, sometimes a ballot can be accompanied by an interpretive statement if the wording in the actual proposal is unclear, and I was wondering if there's any plans to do that.
I wouldn't know, I'm sorry.
The ballot as it exists on the website is the actual ballot that either has been or will be mailed to all of the Chatham Borough and Chatham Township residents. The ballot has been prepared by the district bond attorney to meet the New Jersey standards.
Okay. So no mention of an auditorium or kindergarten. I just wanted to bring up, I didn't know if you guys were aware of New Jersey Title 19 that says, I can read it to you. It suggests that an interpretive statement, if the wording is unclear, can accompany the ballot. I'll go ahead and do that. NJSA 19.3-6, any public question voted upon at an election shall be presented in simple language that can be easily understood by the voter. The printed phrasing of said question on the ballots clearly set forth the true purpose of the matter being voted upon. Where the question concerns any amendment to the state constitution or any statute or other legal titles of any nature, the printed phrasing on the ballot shall include a brief statement interpreting same. So I just wanted to pass that on, and I just hope that the board will make it clear that it's an auditorium being built or full-day kindergarten or what the voters are actually voting on. Thank you.
I think it's hard to be any clearer. We've got a video on our website. We've got 100 PowerPoint slides on our website that explain very clearly what the projects are. We have a mailing that will arrive in homes probably this week. I don't know how much clearer we can make what the projects are. And according to the executive county superintendent, the wording on the ballot meets all the requirements that need to be met.
If I may, I understand that, and I appreciate that you guys have had many public meetings and have many videos and letters that have gone out. But if a voter hadn't attended any of those and walked into the voting booth and saw this ballot, it's not made clear what's being done at the middle school. It says, and I can read it, Board of Education, School District of the Chatham, County of Morris, New Jersey. It's so small I can hardly read it. I'll go back to the March 9th meeting. Provide for renovations and alterations at Chatham High School and Chatham Middle School, additions at Chatham Middle School, Milton Avenue School, Washington Avenue School, and improvements at Cougar Field, including related work, fixtures, furnishings, equipment, and site work. And B, to appropriate $24 million approximately for the project. C, to issue bonds of the school district to finance the projects in the principal amount of $24+ million, and D, to transfer funds among the projects at this special election. The final eligible costs of the projects approved by the Commissioner of Education are $7 million, $2.5 allocated to Chatham High School, $3.3 allocated to Chatham Middle School, $700,000 allocated to Milton Avenue School, $333 to Washington Avenue School. The Cougar Field improvements are not eligible for state support. The aggregate amount of the cost of the projects includes $7.5, in parentheses, $3 million allocated to Chatham High School, $3 million to the middle school, and $1.4 to Cougar Field improvements. For school facility construction elements, in addition to the facilities efficiency standards developed by the Commissioner of Education, or not otherwise eligible for state support pursuant to NJSA 18A 7G 5G. State debt service aid percentage will equal 40% of the annual debt service with respect to the $7.2 million final eligible costs. That's what a voter will be voting on when they enter the voting booth. So I was just curious if an interpretive statement could be provided. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, Mr. Carr? Sure thing.
Good evening. I'm Stuart Carr, 3 Crestwood Drive in Chatham. I guess I'd just like to ask the question and get an answer, will there be an interpretive statement put on the ballot for this particular question? I don't think we answered that question.
Oh, not at this time. Oh, I thought Mr. DeCola did.
No, he said, talking about that you've complied with things. The question was, will there be an interpretive statement accompanying the question?
No.
No. Is there any flexibility to do that?
I guess we could talk about it. Is it set in stone? I don't know the process.
At this point, the ballot cannot be adjusted. The ballot has been signed off and
Okay.
sent to the county and is published.
So there appears to be no flexibility.
Okay, so you can't put interpretive statement. Okay. A couple non-academic issues. One, I asked a question a couple of weeks ago about the Washington Avenue School parking lot, what the timing is on that, and has there been any public hearing or discussion about alternatives to putting in a parking lot versus keeping that patch of green.
Peter, would you be able to tell us how?
Yes, I'd be happy to. The district architect and district engineer are still finalizing all of the plans before we go to bid with two alternatives, one for a minor addition to the parking lot and one for the major addition that was discussed over a year ago. Once the plans are finalized, the district, I've already met with Vince Denov, the borough engineer, and then the district will meet with the planning board.
I was talking about, again, community residents having a,
The borough planning board meetings are open to the public, and they publish an agenda. The district will be slated on the agenda for when we go to the planning board meeting.
And was there any public discussion amongst the Board of Education about using that, like there was with the parking lot a few years ago when it was requested? Was there any discussion at the board level about that parking lot and potential alternatives to that?
If my memory serves me correct, there was a minor discussion when we had Phase 1, which was the expansive parking lot that we presented to the planning board, and I don't have the exact date, but it is over a year ago. The Finance Committee has discussed the alternative proposal, but there has not been I do not believe there's been a full board discussion on the alternative.
Okay, and a third alternative is do nothing. Is there any discussion about the do nothing, i.e. keep it green, because unlike what engineers think and planning boards think, perhaps it's good for the kids to have more green and more kids to walk and kind of work around it, particularly if you take a look at the demographic study that I think you folks put together in 16, 17, 18, whenever it is, you're looking like Washington Avenue is going to be going down in population potentially. So if you could ride it out for a couple of years, maybe keeping that green would be constructive. Is there any thought to that? Does anybody have any kind of sensitivity to more green for a bunch of kids is better than more macadam? Any thought at all whatsoever about that? Has that been vetted? Has that been discussed anywhere?
I don't think we've had any. We've had some discussion in this forum, with residents who've expressed concerns about creating more parking at the school. But we've also had years of concerns from the administration there about the lack of parking for staff members and others. And I know we've had some other issues just in terms of the borough and managing traffic and the parking that's spilling off site. So we have not had a public hearing like we did at the high school when we expanded that parking lot, and we have not had discussion. We've not had, I'd say, any significant discussions about alternatives like not doing anything and riding out the enrollment wave and seeing if it actually declines.
Because that may not be a bad idea. Again, one of the comments that Dr. LaSousa made in that public forum with the township the other day, which I thought was a very good thing, and perhaps put that on the website. Mr. Gilfillan's comments were very, very, I think, instructive at that meeting a couple of weeks ago. But one of the comments we made about the middle school with the no windows was that the architect said it was okay. I didn't hear anything about like school psychologists or what teachers think or what the kids think or anything like that. I know that's not a big deal, but it seems that there's not that dimension about is there any kind of aesthetic or psychological or sociological or whatever, benefit to having more green, particularly since we've already put on a couple more parking lots in Washington Avenue. Does anybody care about that? We keep talking about the considerations about convenience for traffic and this and that. It seems like there's a way to potentially maintain that, or again, at least vet that issue and see before we put more macadam on, is there any way to perhaps keep the status quo? Because I think that's a very valuable piece of real estate for the kids and for the neighborhood. And I just haven't heard that, actually vetted. Then item number 2, non-academic, goes to the high school. Again, my concern there about having another turf field. We have a bunch of turf fields. I think athletics in general benefits to some extent by the turf, but I think for the high school and baseball and the fact that we do have I think a green space back there, that we should consider alternatives to turfing the high school. And again, I asked the same question, how did we vet that item? Was there anybody who was thinking no about the turf, or was it strictly the yes people, the baseball people and whomever else who say perhaps we should do turf? Has there been any kind of vetting of the pros and cons of the turf idea versus doing a good baseball field and doing something like, if you need infield in late March, early April, go down to Lum, things like that? Were those ideas vetted in any of these forums that you folks have, or strictly?
Some of the public meetings, the Board of Ed meetings and the 3 public meetings that came up.
I know it came up, but I mean in terms of vetting the different alternatives where people would come in and actually decide whether. So did anybody ever talk about the benefits of keeping the green grass? Like, did we talk to the neighbors, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we weighed the benefits, the pros and the cons, and we need the space, and we need to be able to use it, sooner than grass allows.
Mm-hmm. We need to, I mean, there's no other baseball field. There's like 2 baseball fields in northern New Jersey, or 3 that have turf. It's not like we have any kind of it. Well, anyway, I'm getting off, but the gist is, do we run the traps again? Did we have a comprehensive discussion on the pros and cons of these different alternatives?
I believe so.
Okay, we, in the public forum?
Public meetings every 2 weeks, the 3 sessions that we've had, I believe we have. People did express their opinions. Again, you have to weigh the pros and cons. If we could have all grass, that'd be great. But we need to be able to play on it sooner.
And if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been vetted substantially, both at multiple levels, in the board meeting, the committee meetings, the open meetings we've had. We sought the input of various elements of the community. There's certain practicalities of living in the Northeast with regard to usability of fields. Now, I'm a grass guy. I would love to be grass.
My kids had the benefit of the turf, no issue.
But
understand.
You got to look at the practicalities of the situation. You have a field that's grass. We can't touch it for, we can't, it gets subject to weather adverse. If you had a turf field, it can be used repeatedly. And it's not just baseball. It can be used all seasons. If you want to go back to, I don't know, forgive me if I'm not certain, township or borough where you're from, but let's go back and talk about the Lum field. That was a grass field.
Agreed.
For years.
Understood.
And it was a one-season field. And one sport would do it, and they'd chew it up. Now that field is being used almost every season.
And I agreed with the Lum concept.
Okay.
No problem.
And by the way, we're not turfing the entire back of the high school. It is a portion of the high school that is being turfed.
What's the baseball field and it's the softball field? That's a pretty good portion.
Well, there's no softball. It's the
or whatever the other.
It's where the varsity
where the softball used to be.
If you can kind of picture it, I believe it's to the right. It's where the varsity plays, and that's also going to allow for field hockey to play there too. So it's going to be a multi-purpose field.
Understood.
And again, it's the realities of living in the Northeast. If we were in the South or somewhere warmer, we wouldn't have these things. If our district was out west and we had open fields, I just came from Middletown. I got more field. I got fields bigger than Chatham and Township combined, but we don't have that.
Oh, we have a
limited number of fields. And we owe it to the student athletes who are playing on those fields to get them ready. And this is the most economically feasible way of pursuing it. We've looked at this. We've also looked at the expenses of what it's going to cost if we just put grass. You have to upgrade it, and that's going to be a tax, a burden on the maintenance crew.
Right. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm perplexed by this question. We've vetted this repeatedly and sought input from a whole host of people, including yourself. I've heard you mention this multiple occasions, and you make some great points, but there have been an equal number of great points made in support of it. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way is, yes, this topic has been discussed at multiple levels. We have sought the input from multiple people and members of the community, and we're trying to do the best thing right now.
That's all understood. We're all in the same boat.
Turf, that portion of the field will have the biggest bang for the buck.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. We're going to move on to our regular action items, and there's a second opportunity for public commentary toward the end.
I'm sorry about that.
Moving on to personnel, Ms. Kenny.
I would like to move agenda items A1 to A13 for vote.
I'll second the motion.
Is there additional commentary on the personnel items, A1 through A13? No? No, Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind?
Agenda items A1 through A13. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Franz? Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Nonamaker?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 7-0.
Moving on to finance and facilities.
Yes, I'd like to move action items B1 through 6, 7 as changed on the addendum, and 8 through 11. John?
I'd second the motion. We're getting lazy on this side.
I know there's no thanks to be given out because Mr. Ruth already did that, but thank you very much for all the hard work.
Thank you, Mr. Ruth and company. Are there any additional comments on the finance and facilities item? No? Seeing none, Mr. DeQuilla?
Agenda items B1 through B11 with 7 adjusted in the addendum. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Franz?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Nonamaker?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes, thank you.
Agenda items passed 7-0.
Ms. Cronin had to step out early, so I'm just going to move these items. I'd like to move action items C1 through C3 on the regular agenda and no addendums. I'll second the motion. Excellent field trips. Does anybody have any questions about the C1 through C3? The poor soul's going to the federal courthouse in Newark. Mr. Connors, maybe you can join them there? Which judge do you think they'll end up with?
I can select a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple who I wouldn't suggest they go to. Courthouse.
Seeing no other
Depends
comments.
how they act on the bus.
Mr. DeQuilla?
Agenda items C1 to C3. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Franz?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Nonamaker?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 7-0.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the baton in Mr. Belding's absence to Mr. Franz to move policy.
I move the motion to pass D1.
I second the motion. Any additional conversation on policies? Policy 2425 and 5756? No? Seeing none? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstentions?
Agenda item passes 7-0.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. DeQuilla. We have an opportunity for board business. I know we have a couple of folks able to... Mr. Connors, would you like to go first, or Mr. Gilfillan?
It's up to you. You want to go first?
Gentlemen?
Tell me. Oh, this is my beauty or age.
A beauty or age.
I'd like to say a few. I missed the last couple of meetings, and I believe that either 2 meeting ago, each of the board members were asked to give their comments on the referendum and their view as to whether it should be packaged as one question or broken up into various categories. Unfortunately, I had to miss the last 2 meetings for personal reasons, but I thought it important that I step up and let people know what I thought. I fully endorse the referendum, and I completely endorse it being packaged as one, and I'll get into that in a few moments. But before I do, I want to thank the administration and all the work they did in putting together the various open sessions, and I'd like to thank the community, a number of who I've seen out there repeatedly show up and express their views. Whether you agree or disagree, it's important that you get up there and talk and express your views. What I don't want to see happen is 20% of the electorate make the decision that affects 100% of the residents of the community. It's important that if it gets supported or rejected, quite frankly, it should not be rejected by 20%. It should be approved or at least voted on by as many members of the community as we can. We all have a stakehold in this. So good, bad, or indifferent, it's important that you show up and vote. I think it's important that we look at the timing. Right now, there's a confluence of events that make this the right time to make this proposal in terms of when our debt is coming due, in terms of interest rates. I don't think you can question the timing right now. I think it's a great time to do it, and the finance people and the accounting people of the world would probably give you a better explanation than I. But I think an absolute need has been presented, and now is the time to do it. I believe that it should all be packaged together as one. And I think it's important to do that because I don't want to see one part of the community competing against another part for the vote. There's an expression, in for a penny, in for a pound. Over the years, this district has been extremely generous with regard to the money that it's spending. As Jim O'Neill, the prior superintendent, used to say, Chatham is the craziest community he's ever dealt with, because it's the only community that when there is a discussion regarding a reduction of the budget, people come out in droves and say, no, don't reject it, add it, keep it into the budget. And I believe that the board, the community, and the administration has unanimously and consistently upheld the wish that we all have to keep Chatham at the highest level we can. But in order to do that, we have to invest. Other generations have invested in the program. It is now our time to do that. It is a need that we have to have. The investment can't be just with teachers. It just can't be with curriculum and athletics. You have to invest in the brick and mortar. I think it's important that we do that, and we have consistently done that over the years. The opponents, from what I've heard, and I've heard many of you, of the budget, of the referendum, have focused on the theater group. They have called it the PAC Center. That seems to be the underbelly that the proponents are focusing on, and that's the drum they keep beating as to why this whole budget the referendum should be voted down. To that I say, over the years, we have upgraded every part of the district school system. We have added classrooms to the pre-K schools. We have added classrooms to the middle schools. We have added classrooms to the high schools. We have upgraded athletic fields. We have added curriculum. We've added Mandarin. We have added STEM, and there are hundreds of students benefiting from that. And each time we make one of those decisions, there's a cost associated with it. And sometimes that cost is voted upon by the community, but every single time that that vote has been presented to the community, one particular group has consistently supported every other group. The theater parents, the theater groups have supported. They don't get any bang for the buck with regard to the upgrades at Cougar. They haven't gotten any bang for the buck with regard to the numerous upgrades we've done to the K-3 schools. It is time, I urge you people, to please keep that in mind. Every year that they've been asked to vote, they have voted for us consistently. And to you parents of past, current, and future kindergarten students, to the students who are in the K-3 school, to the Chatham Middle School, to the high school, and all the students who have played athletics, who have benefited from the upgrades that we have done on every other level. It is now time, and of which the theater people have supported consistently. That needs to be upgraded. It needs to be upgraded, and you can't do it in a piecemeal fashion. The questions are, why can't we just upgrade the middle school and then upgrade the auditorium? You can't, because it has a ripple effect on the other components of the education system. You can't, because if you do that, you're actually going to make things worse in terms of the numbers that we'll be able to provide for the students. This was given a lot of thought, and I humbly submit to you, it is the best way to proceed. Now is the time to do it. Every other generations in the past have been faced with this, and they've all stood up. And I'm asking you again, please, do it because it helps everybody. For the student who isn't the athlete, for the student who isn't a student that well, for a student who can't do STEM. I can't tell you how many times we've been up here where we were going to do something with regard to the theater, and then the theater students and the families have shown up. They have a passion for it. Let's give them a chance. And I know it's a big ticket, but it'll have a ripple effect. We are a #1 district in the state because we invest in our district. And that includes theater. That includes all the components of the theater. So long story short, I'm in favor of the referendum, and I'm absolutely in favor of bundling it together. Because you can't have one group trying to, you know, trade off with another group. You vote for me, I'll vote for you. We're all in this together. If every member of the community is going to have to pay the tax, then every member of the community should get something out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connors. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yeah, I do want to discuss situations that are arising from the people who are against the referendum, and make sure the board is aware of organizations that have developed, as well as communications that have gone out. I think it's very important for the board to know what is out there in terms of drumming up negative, I can't say negative support, negative feelings towards the referendum. A group called educationfocus.org, which has put a relatively informative website together. If you guys haven't seen it, it's www.educationfocus.org. The organization also took the opportunity to use district lists to send out emails to all of the parents of students within the district. I will tell you that I don't think that is what our lists are meant for. I don't think we should be soliciting. I don't think that opens it up. I think we need to review this from a policy, because I don't want that situation whereby new business comes in and gets our district lists and starts sending out coupons. I don't think that's what it's meant for. And with that, this organization sent out a note, and I'd like to read to you the area that they focused on the most, I believe, in terms of speaking of this referendum from a negative viewpoint. This is their quote, unquote. It will cost approximately $1 million out of the school district of the Chatham's operating budget every year for the next 20 years to pay for the PAC and offices. Quote unquote, that's roughly $1 million annually that can't be spent otherwise. STEM, classrooms, full-day kindergarten, special ed services. Now, I looked at the people on the board of this organization, and I can tell you that I recognize a number of them, and we've had the discussion with this group multiple times, telling them that none of the dollars for this referendum come out of the operating budget. Zero. And I know those people have been in discussions in the public forums, personal conversations, and yet, while I believe you have an absolute inalienable right to be against something that your elected officials are doing, the Board of Ed, the Township Council, or Borough Councils, I do not believe that there is a right to put out on purpose what I believe, on purpose, misinformation, to try to do what I would believe is scare tactics. So by telling people that we're taking $1 million out of operating budget, which could impact their children's education, which is an absolute, complete 100% false comment, I don't believe that that is something that the community should stand for. I don't believe it's proper use of our district communication system, and I am personally quite taken aback that an organization would on purpose use misinformation trying to create negative thoughts within the community. So I want to make sure that the board knows that the organization exists. I want you to know what the organization did. I will repeat, everybody has their right, and they have their right in the end to go up and vote, and they can vote yes or no. And you have your absolute right to be against what we are supporting. However, I do not believe that you have a right to misinform the public. So I'm going to, again, inform the public right now. This referendum will have absolute zero impact on our operating budget. Zero. Okay, it is financed outside of the operation as a general tax cost. So there will be no impact in any way in terms of the curricular side of what we're doing, from our development of STEM, the potential look at full-day kindergarten, I quote, and I focus on the word potential, as well as special ed services. So I wanted to make sure that you guys, ladies, were all aware of this. I wanted to make sure you go and look at the website. I believe there is numerous misinformation on the website in terms of what the purpose of this referendum is. And with that, if you guys have any questions for me or have any comments, I will open it up to the balance of the board.
I'm sorry, can we just follow up on what list did they get and how did they get this list?
We have school directories that parents have the ability to opt out of.
Okay.
So we maintain those, and parents can access them online via our Genesis system. So, yeah, the group used the email addresses therein to send an email blast out to parents in the district.
Has anything like that ever happened before?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
No, in fact, the groups that are within our district ask permission of the board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Has that ever been done without asking our permission? I'm sorry, John.
Yeah, without our, or
Not that
internal
I
groups.
know of.
I mean, I've been in the
But
district.
I'm not. I mean, I don't know.
I've been in the district 17 years, and I've never seen that happen. I've been in the town 25 years. I've never seen that happen.
Can I see who's on this message on the list?
Does anybody else have any comments or questions? It's quite, I mean, my only comment is it's quite disappointing because every one of those members has asked these exact questions, and we've answered these questions over and over and over and over again. So at best, it's misinformation, and at worst, it's intentionally deceitful. So go back and look at the tapes where you asked yourselves the questions and we answered the questions. So again, is it misinformation or is it intentionally deceitful? Very disappointing. Does any other board members have any comment or additional board business that they'd like to bring up? No? Mr. Nonmaker?
No.
No?
Other than my desire to expose, I'll refrain.
Oh, see? Look at you maturing.
No, but I think that people who disseminate false information should be held accountable for it.
I guess we're the only ones asked for transparency. Okay. Seeing no additional board business, going once, going twice, we have our second opportunity for public commentary, and we do not have an executive session tonight.
Oh, we don't?
No?
Well, that's handy then.
Jane Devlin, Chatham Township. I go on record that I support and trust that the Board of Education complied with the county's regulation regarding the ballot and its wording, and that in good faith they are using every avenue to educate the public, including what I think Dr. LaSousa said, 100 PowerPoint presentation, or at least multiple different ways they've been educating the public. I have to question the issue with the interpretive addendum. The earliest speaker asked, what about a voter who goes to vote and isn't familiar with the issues as reason for requesting the addendum? Well, why would a voter go to the booths to vote without beforehand being familiar with the issues they are voting on? That's like voting for a candidate and not knowing what platform they stand for. It seems like an inference is being made that this Board of Ed is acting out of self-serving measures and are being opaque or pulling a fast one, and that makes little logic. I support the referendum, and I support this board, that this board knows what they are doing and acting in the district's best interests. I would ask if the Board of Ed is going to respond to education-focused, particularly since they have used the district mailing lists and are seemingly promulgating misinformation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devlin. Thank you, Ms. Devlin. Any additional commentary? I'm sorry, the folks in the audience, if you wouldn't mind just lining up, if you are going to comment, that would be helpful, so we can gauge. Sorry, no, sorry, Mr. Carr. If 15 people are going to speak, I just wanted to gauge.
I apologize. I wasn't going to.
No.
Stuart Carr from 3
There's only
Crestwood
two
Drive in
people.
Chatham. With Mr. Gilfillan's comment, I guess one of the issues, and again, I haven't read this memo about the operating versus capital budget, et cetera, but I think the spirit is, if not the actual words, it's generic money. One way or the other, when you get down to the bottom line, there is a cost to the taxpayer. And if you call it in the capital budget or the operating budget or wherever it is, it's still ultimately the cost. So I think the $1 million a year they may be mischaracterized, not mischaracterized, but misstating, I guess, the operating budget. It's $1 million that could be utilized somewhere else within the system, irrespective of whether it's in the capital budget or the operating budget. And whether you do a second question or whether you expand the operating budget ahead of 2% and ask the people to do it, the question, I think, is what's the alternative use of that $1 million? Not that they're pulling it out of the existing budget. It's the concept of there's $1 million that is going to be allocated to that purpose. Is it better allocated to another purpose? And you folks have argued that you vetted all those things and this is the best allocation. Maybe that's the answer. But I think the thought there is that there's a different allocation for that $1 million. Whether it's in the capital budget, whether it's in the operating budget, there's a better place to spend the money. That's, I think, the thought. I don't know one way or the other. I haven't read it. But that's, and also, too, speaking of the idea of being transparent, again, I referenced this issue of the Chatham Township meeting where we did, I think, get to the issue from the savings into the wash. Mr. Gilfillan's comment with respect to moving the administrative offices down to the middle school. That I think we were talking about savings for a long time. That was the first time I really heard about it. It's not really savings, it's really a reallocation. So I think maybe there could have been better characterization of how you're going to speak to that, going back several months. And it was really that last meeting with the Chatham Township was really the first time I heard somebody actually come out and say it is a wash instead of 100,000. So speaking of, again, talking about mischaracterizing or not being completely clear, I think it does go both ways. So I'm sure it was in good faith, but maybe not quite said the right way, and perhaps these other people are in good faith and just not able to characterize it appropriately. But at least from my perspective, it's, and again, I'm for that art center for crying out loud, so I'm just aggravated with the turf. I actually like the art center. But the point there is, the argument is the $1 million, is it better allocated to do something else? And getting caught up in capital budget and operating budget is all very nice, but it's generically a dollar amount that goes out the door to one use versus another use. I think that's where it is. So let's just get back to arguing the merits and not get back on the mischaracterization.
Get your hands on the email. I can show it to you. That's not what they're saying. So.
Okay, well, then, again, that's like they say, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So my interpretation, again, was the idea it's a generic. At least from my perspective, let's, again, stay with the merits and figure out the best use as opposed to talking about operating and capital budgets, much like you did the other night.
Yeah.
What if we put the turf in the art center? Would you be for the turf?
And put it on the roof. We're good to go. All right, thank you.
Libby Hills and Rath Chatham Borough. I'd like to follow on Mr. Carr's comments. I think, because I did see that, and I think it goes to the same idea, whether it's, the $66 million total budget. I know there's 61 that's operating or 58 that we're voting on. Debt service fund is one of those items. So basically, it comes out of the taxpayer's pocket, and I think we're, that $800,000 to $1 million a year over 20 years, the question becomes, can we better spend that? Can we better spend that $11 to $14 million toward renovating each of the auditoriums? And that's an alternative. I think that's the perspective that some people have, and I just wanted to make that clear. And I'd like to thank Mr. Connors and also follow up on Mr. Carr's comments from before. He was asking about the turf fields, and I've made this comment before. I know you weren't here the last 2 weeks, but a suggestion is to take these subcommittees, which there's finance, policy, curriculum, and another one, personnel, I think, and get those out to the public. So if these are discussions that you guys have had as a board in the committee meetings, let's try to make those public, get the public involved, because I think each of the committees only involves board members. And so maybe it's a way to just inform us with either minutes that are published or anything. So if these conversations have gone on in the past, if the public could know, that'd be great.
As they were held in venues other than the committee meetings, they were held regularly open, but your point's well taken. Is there a policy regarding the minutes for the committee meetings? Well, I'm not asking you. I'm asking Dr. D'Souza.
Our policy and practice is to report out on the meetings, which is what is the agenda. Well, that's on the agenda each time.
Answer the last 2 meetings that you missed.
That's
sorry.
right.
No, it's okay. It's the same answer.
Well, did say he wasn't here, so but it's just those. Mr. Connors, it's just those, these couple of minutes of each of the board members reporting to us. So if the minutes of each of those committee meetings could be made public, or if there's community involved, I think it's just another way to help inform the public. And I know you weren't here the last 2 meetings, so I wanted to thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Hi, Amanda Feeman again from the township. I'll be brief. I think, Rich, you couldn't have articulated things more clearly or more eloquently. In working with you for the past 2 years, I will say, in working with you, in any meeting that we've had, you have always asked, where does every member of the community stand, from a preschool parent to a senior citizen? So I know that when you speak from the podium, you are genuine and you have looked at this from every angle and have advocated that everybody have a voice. I will also stand up and hear when I hear people asking for things like an interpretive statement and asking for more and more. I have been at most of these meetings. I have 2 very young children. If you are committed and you want to know, then you can be in this room. You can show up at the meetings. You can read what's on the website. There is so much information out there to get informed. So I encourage everybody to get informed and vote the way that you feel appropriate based on accurate information. As somebody who worked for an accounting firm for 10 years, saying that things are going to come out of operating expenses, and somebody who's advocating for full-day kindergarten and has received emails trying to convince us that making capital improvements is going to affect operating expenses, it's not true. It can't happen. From an accounting standpoint, it cannot happen. When you go for a capital improvement and you go seek a bond, the board is trying to protect our programming at the least amount of cost possible, because you cannot go get a bond for programs. You have to go get a bond for capital improvements, and they have to be accounted for separately from operating expenses. And I believe that the people on the email understand that, and they are trying to convince some of us who are in support of that we are going to suffer from a programming standpoint because of it. And though I speak from full-day kindergarten, there are many of us in that group that did have careers in finance. We're lawyers by training. We understand what's going on out there, as well as the people on the board have careers too. So I want to say that I think it's important for the public to get the information from the source, and if you have questions about the finances, to ask people who truly understand the finances, not just read those words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, I know. Yeah. The boosters, right?
Hi. I'm May Hacking from the township. I wanted to first start off and say thank you, Mr. Gilfillan, for addressing directly the group that's out there and the information that they're spreading, and the use of the lists in particular that I know as a member of the executive board at the Southern Boulevard School, I know I was deeply disturbed to find out that the information had been spread through district resources, et cetera. And I appreciate your addressing directly some of the claims that are being made and the information that's being spread. The only thing I'm disappointed by is the maybe 12 people who are in the room, which is something we suffer with the PTO as well. But if there's a way, perhaps in the media, to get the sort of information out, so it is more widely heard, the point of view from the Board of Ed, and the kind of counter-arguments to some of the information that's going out there. But I appreciate your saying those things directly and to the head. And then I secondly wanted to say thank you very much, Mr. Connors, for your for giving your point of view. I was here when the board went kind of down the row and talked about their different points of view on the referendum and the bundling, and I found your argument to be unique to be comprehensive, and I guess as Amanda was referring, holistic viewpoint, and the fact that this part of the population has been in support of this district for so many years in things that aren't directly beneficial to their own interests. Honestly, I never thought, I'm in support of the referendum, but I didn't even think about it that way, and I appreciate your bringing that additional point of view to light. And then also the passion to which you responded to the question about the turfing and whether it was the best solution. I've always assumed that what you present has been thoughtfully considered across the board. For each of you, intelligent people, you're not up there for no reason, I suppose. But I believe that the things that you present to us are thoughtfully vetted. And I appreciate that you take the opportunity to show us that. I think sometimes we don't always get to see or understand how many hours have gone into this, how much thought, how many conversations, how many emails. I'm sure they go on, but we as a public don't often see them. But the passion with which you responded to that question, I think, helps communicate some of that. And I think I just wish more people were here to experience it and understand it themselves. So thank you, that's all.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to close the current public session.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Yeah. Yes.
He's not against. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Drive safely. Thank you, Tom.